Hi everyone, author Amy Ray here. I know everyone's going stir crazy during the lockdown, but now is a great time to catch up on some reading. And if you like gritty, realistic fiction, then I've got the novel for you. My novel, The Devil's Swing. So I thought I would come on here and read the summary of my novel, as well as the poem in the beginning and the prologue. Um, so here it goes. Here's the summary. Jamie Jewell underwent years of physical and emotional torment at the hands of her older brother Matt until he was sent to jail for an unrelated violent crime and sentenced to 5 years. However, due to a legal loophole, Matt is thrust back into Jamie's life much sooner than she expected or wanted, and the abuse resumes. Feeling vulnerable and unloved, Jamie finds solace in the arms of Billy Greer, a charming, smooth-talking boy who she believes will rescue her from her miserable home life. In an effort to escape, she is prepared to follow Billy anywhere, even if it leads down the slippery slope of drug addiction. This is the story of her descent. And here is the poem. Devil's Swing. Over the rushing river where shaggy fir trees stand, the devil himself is pushing my swing with furry hand. Pushing, he laughs away, and up I go, and down I go. The seat creaks ominously, the rope begins to fray, rubbing against a bough. Prolonged the seat board's creaking, as up and down it glides, with wheezy laughter shaking, the devil holds his sides. I hang on, swinging, gliding, as up I go and down I go, slithering, slipping, sliding, my dizzy gaze avoiding the devil down below. Above the shady fir tree, a voice laughs from the blue. You've landed on the swing, see? Swing into hell with you. And in the shaggy fir tree, a raucous hullabaloo. You've landed on the swing, see? Swing into hell with you. The devil will not leave it. The swing will fly apace, till with a violent buffet, I'm swept clean off my place. Until the last few strands of hemp snap finally, until my native land comes flying up at me. I'll soar above that fir tree and bang earth with my head. So swing the swing on devil, higher, higher, ah. This is by Fyodor Sologub, and I thought this poem was a perfect illustration for my book. So now I'm going to read you the prologue. Have to excuse me, I need new glasses, so if I stumble, I apologize. Prologue. Evil doesn't always look like evil. It doesn't always wear black, nor is it an ugly, deformed monster with claws and fangs. Sometimes evil comes in the guise of an angelic-looking boy with blonde hair and blue eyes named Matt. I was aware of my older brother's evil nature almost as soon as I was aware of anything in life. It radiated from him like a living, breathing entity that you could practically see and feel. Even as a child, Matt looked at the world through cold, sadistic eyes that a child should never have been capable of possessing. Every one of Matt's emotions was faked and forced, except for his rage, which was always real and terrifying, and I was his convenient target. My parents were no help in the situation. Matt wasn't book smart, but he was a master manipulator, and by the time he'd finished weaving his tales, my parents would believe that I had somehow provoked him into violence, or they would dismiss his actions as typical sibling rivalry. Other times they would blame his behavior on the abuse he had suffered at the hands of his biological parents, just before my own parents adopted him at the age of 4. I can tell you, though, there was nothing typical about the way Matt tormented me or how he even seemed to delight in it. Sometimes his abuse was physical, sometimes it was mental, but I soon came to realize that Matt's prior abuse had nothing to do with his disposition. I was convinced he had come from the womb, hating the world and everyone in it. By the age of 12, he was already using and selling drugs, and for a while, he became so preoccupied with drugs that he virtually forgot about me. That is, the torment and harassment was less frequent. Then, when Matt was 15, I did something that would forever seal my fate, and something that he would never forget. I inadvertently helped get him thrown into jail. I was busy doing things that typical 11-year-old girls did and had nearly forgotten what Matt was capable of until that fateful evening. My parents were out of the house, which wasn't unusual except for the fact They were out together, voluntarily. I could remember my parents' aversion to each other for about as long as I could remember my brother's wickedness. Anyway, I was up in my room at the time, minding my own business, and as far as I knew, Matt was downstairs doing the same. But some time later, I heard the sound of raised voices downstairs. At first, I thought my parents had come home early and were engaged in one of their usual shouting matches, but I quickly realized that the two voices were Matt's and someone else's, and something was off. I stopped what I was doing and listened closer, but I couldn't make out any words, only an unfamiliar voice which kept growing increasingly shrill and high, followed by Matt's thunderous retorts, and then horrifying sounds that I'll take with me to the grave. High pitched, agonized screams that sounded like a wounded animal, intermixed with dull, wet thwaps, and then one last scream that was abruptly cut short with a heart stopping finality. The screams soon resumed, though, and I clapped my hands over my ears to block them out. But the sickening noises reverberated in my head, and that's when I realized the screams were my own. I was terrified, but my curiosity soon overrode my fear. I had to know who or what had made those sounds, so I crept down the stairs. The lights were off in the living room, and a sliver of moonlight slicing through the curtains offered the only illumination. In that sparse light, I was able to make out Matt's form. He was standing balanced on the balls of his bare feet in a ready position. One fist was drawn back, and the other hand was clutching a large lump that lay crumpled on the floor. The mass wasn't moving, but Matt was staring down at it as if he expected to come to life suddenly and fight back. The carpet around the figure was splattered with a dark substance, and I edged closer to get a better look. Matt must have sensed my presence, however, and he spun around on me, still clutching whatever lay at his feet. When I got a good look at his face in the moonlight, I realized that evil existed, and on that night it resided in my brother. Matt no longer looked human as he stood there, ready to pounce. He was panting hard like he'd just run a marathon, and his teeth were bared like that of a feral dog. His blue eyes appeared black in the night and were open so wide they seemed to bulge out of their sockets. The same dark substance that surrounded the lump on the floor was splattered all over Matt's face, looking inky black in the night. A sick feeling stirred inside of me when I realized what it was: blood. Matt's once white t-shirt was now soaked with it, and his drawn fist dripped large droplets onto the carpet. But most disturbing was that among the blood there wasn't a visible scratch on him. None of the blood appeared to be his. And then the moonlight shifted through the trees, illuminating the lump long enough for me to tell that it was once a person, but he or she was so bloodied and mangled beyond recognition that I couldn't tell the gender or age, only that he or she was no longer moving. The screams resumed, and this time they were all mine. I was still screaming when the police and ambulance arrived. They told me that Tim Shelby would live, not the same as before, of course, but he would survive my brother's rage. I would later find out that the brutal attack had been over a measly $5 worth of drugs that Tim had stolen from my brother. Tim was lucky in some respects, though, because he would go on with his life and most likely never encounter my brother again. I, however, would not be so lucky. The police questioned me, and I simply told them about the horrifying screams and then finding Matt standing over Tim's lifeless body. So they locked Matt up just like that and sentenced him to 5 years. He would start out at a boys' reformatory, and then once he turned 18, he would be transferred to an adult prison to serve out the rest of his sentence. The judge hoped that Matt would learn the error of his ways, but I was sure the only thing that he had learned was, if you're going to beat someone to death, make sure you actually do it, and more importantly, leave no witnesses. Locked up, Matt had 5 years to plot his revenge and create a custom tailored hell for the one person he felt responsible for his incarceration: me. I was completely unprepared for what he had in store for me, and I soon became so preoccupied with running away from Matt that I forgot to look where I was running to until it was too late. By then, I was already tumbling off of the cliff and plunging towards the bottom. I could only pray that I wouldn't hit too hard. I guess the place to start would be last summer, because that's when I began to make my descent. So if you like realistic, gritty fiction on a very pressing subject, sibling abuse, like I said in my previous talk when I was talking about the book, Um, I first started writing this back in the 80s, and there wasn't really a lot known about sibling abuse. Um, and unfortunately, today, um, sibling abuse is actually one of the most prevalent forms of domestic violence, but it's not talked about a lot, and a lot of times it's passed off as sibling rivalry. But there's a fine line between rivalry and abuse. So, if, like I said, if you like gritty, realistic fiction, this isn't for the faint of heart. But since it was such a serious subject, I didn't want to sugarcoat it. It's supposed to be shocking and it's supposed to be disturbing, um, because it is a very disturbing topic, and one that needs to be addressed. Um, so I know Amazon isn't shipping out paperbacks right now, but my book is available on Kindle for just $2.99. You don't have to have a Kindle to read it. You can download the free Kindle app, and I'm also going to put a link to the book trailer that I made. Um, and this will be coming to Audible at some point as well. So I hope that if you decide to pick up a copy, you enjoy it. I love to hear feedback, good and bad. I love honest reviews. So thanks for watching. Everybody stay safe and healthy and read up while you're staying in.